Welcome back to another episode of the UNathletic podcast with yours truly. I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit the notification button so you don't miss out on any content from the podcast. Now, on today, I want to touch on the Warriors' recent free agency moves and also some of my thoughts on the Raiders, who have just begun training camp this week. So let's just get right to it. Starting off with the Warriors and their most recent free agency moves. So what they recently have done is the Warriors signed Dante DiVincenzo, guard who played for the Sacramento Kings last year and also played for the Milwaukee Bucks. Was traded from Milwaukee to Sacramento. And Dante DiVincenzo, 25 years old, young player, 6'4", 203 pounds, if that matters to anyone out there. And last season, he averaged overall 9 points per game, 4 rebounds, and about 3 assists a game. So, just my thoughts really quick on Dante DiVincenzo. Very nice fit, very nice addition for the Golden State Warriors, especially after the loss of Gary Payton II. Now, let me make this very clear. Dante DiVincenzo provides a lot as far as what I believe he can be utilized for as a part of the Warriors bench. But let me make this very clear. He does not do everything that Gary Payton II, did for the Warriors. He's not the defender that Gary Payton II was, but I do believe that he is slightly better offensively as far as a shooter. If you noticed last season, Gary Payton was a corner. He would shoot the corner three, or he was diving to the rim. It would be in the dunker spot, and he was great at that. But I think that Dante DiVincenzo is going to be a guy that they can use and utilize more on different parts of the floor. He is also athletic, not as athletic as Gary Payton II. Let me make that very clear as well. But still a very skilled guard, and is a guy that's going to fit in perfectly, and I think he's a solid replacement for Gary Payton II. And then also, the Warriors also will be signing JaMychal Green, who was bought out by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And JaMychal Green is a forward, age 32, 6'8", 227 pounds. And last season, when he played for Denver, because during the offseason he was traded from Denver to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but when he played for the Denver Nuggets last season, he averaged about 8 points a game and about 6 rebounds and about 1 assist per game, which is pretty solid for someone like him. And I think what I love about the addition of JaMychal Green is that with the Warriors losing both Otto Porter Jr. as well as Nemanja Bjelica, the beauty of adding somebody like JaMychal Green is that he gives you a lot of what Otto Porter gave you on the floor, which is, just ancillary scoring, as well as being a very solid rebounder at the 3-4 position. And then he also defended well. And with JaMychal Green, I think he brings that same scoring, he brings the rebounding. But I also think what's interesting is that he kind of brings a little grit to the game, because he's a bit of a enforcer, and he's a guy that, doesn't back down from anyone. And I like the idea of the Warriors adding somebody like JaMychal Green, who just adds an extra level of grit to the bench. And now the Warriors officially have Green squared. They have Draymond Green, and now they have JaMychal Green. Going to be interesting how they figure out the names on the back of the jerseys. But, now you got 2 players with the last name Green, Draymond and JaMychal. Now, moving on, The Warriors' latest signing was McCallum from their Las Vegas Summer League roster. McCallum is 23 years of age. He's 6'2", 185. And in Las Vegas, during the Summer League stint he had with the Warriors, he averaged 13.4 points a game, just about 4 rebounds a game, and about 5 assists per game. Now, I will say this. I am not too high on McCallum. He was exciting, and he created highlights in Summer League. I don't question that he's a capable player, but I don't think at this point that he is a guy that will make the roster coming out of training camp. I know that there are a lot of people who are excited about him because of what they saw in in Summer League. But my thought process when it comes to McCallum is that he's a type of guard that, like, he's gonna be okay. And I think he oddly enough actually reminds me somewhat of Gary Payton II. He's just a more offensive-minded version of him. Definitely not the defender that GP2 was, but he is also another guard that is athletic. His playmaking is okay. We'll see how that develops in training camp and if he goes beyond training camp to make the roster. More likely than not, he's essentially going to be probably like the equivalent of Chris Chiozza. And I don't mean that as far as skill set, but I mean that as far as like his spot on the roster, I doubt that he gets a lot of playing time, probably spends a lot of time in the G League with the Warriors, Santa Cruz Warriors in the G League. And I also think that, like, he's going to get, if nothing else, garbage minutes, but he's not going to play a vital role. May end up even getting moved on at some point if there's a player available, whether it be in buyout later on next season or just there's someone else who becomes available potentially. But not the worst signing, of course. I'm not as high on McCallum as others are. But we'll see what he does in training camp, and we'll see what the training, the development staff as well as the coaching staff has in store for him. But he has been signed, so those are the 3 players that the Warriors have signed as of late. Again, it was Dante DiVincenzo, guard, former Sacramento King and Milwaukee Buck. They also signed JaMychal Green, former Denver Nugget, traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder and then was bought out by the Thunder. And then, of course, McCallum, who was one of the stars of the Warriors Summer League team in Las Vegas this year. So for fans out there, Warrior fans who are finally happy that the Warriors made a move, understand free agency is kind of slowed down to a crawl because you still have the anticipation of whether Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to be traded. You still have Russell Westbrook out there who might get moved potentially. You still have other guys out there who could potentially get moved in free agency. So a lot of teams have kind of slowed down their momentum on making moves throughout this offseason as far as, through free agency. But so far, I like what the Warriors have done. I would love for them to add another big. I've been preaching this all season long, or all off season long, I think the Warriors would greatly benefit from adding another big. I don't believe that'll be the plan for the Warriors. I think they're going to probably add another wing. That's what I'm guessing, because I think they view, JaMychal Green as their big, which there's nothing wrong with that per se, because he's a power forward / center, and that's small ball center. because remember, he's only 6'8". But I don't believe that that's enough. I would love for them to add a Boogie Cousins potentially, maybe maybe to a lesser extent a Montrezl Harrell. I doubt that happens just because of his legal issues that he's dealing with right now and off the court issues. But I would love for the Golden State Warriors to add a big, possibly even a Hassan Whiteside potentially, who's still out there and available. I don't think that would be the worst signing. But I definitely believe that the Warriors need to add one more big, and I think their roster would actually be pretty solid. And then there's also still hanging out there the possibility, or not even the possibility, the question of, will Andre Iguodala come back or will Andre retire? Right now, we have no word on what his decision is or what he has decided on. He has not made a decision yet. For me personally, I actually kind of hope Andre retires, not because I don't want Andre on the roster, but because I don't like the idea of him playing the Udonis Haslem role. Preferably, if he's going to do something like that, I would prefer that he actually join the Golden State Warriors coaching staff or front office, still be involved with the organization, but not necessarily just be a roster spot. Because I understand that the coaching staff and the organization greatly value his impact and his presence in the locker room. I do believe that Andre can still be productive as a player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that he's not going to produce or that he will not be able to play for the Warriors anymore. I still think he's still capable of playing for another 2 to 3 years. But I don't want it to be a situation for Andre Iguodala where he has to play the Udonis Haslem role, where he's not playing and he's just on the bench coaching guys up. I would prefer him to be on the floor playing, and I would prefer for him to have a role on the court, not just in the locker room and on the bench. Now, who's ready for some football? Because this week, training camp has started for several teams around the league, including my Las Vegas Raiders. And, you know, for those who don't know or who may not remember, if you could please just go back to my pilot episode, my origin story, and go back and you'll remember that I said I have been a lifelong fan of the Las Vegas Raiders, who were formerly known as the Oakland Raiders. So I have been a lifelong fan, and so the Raiders are the team that I will probably be giving you the most information on, just because that is my squad. But football in general will be a topic because we are getting closer to the season, and the Hall of Fame game is not too far away. And if I remember correctly, the Raiders are going to be playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that is going to be the first game of the preseason. So I just want to give you guys some info on what I've been hearing and what's been said around training camp thus far. So I'm going to start with Levi Edwards, the digital team reporter for the Las Vegas Raiders. He said that Davante Adams, new wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, who they traded for from the Green Bay Packers. This is what Levi Edwards had to say about him. He said that Davante Adams' moves on the field look effortless, and describes his play style is ease. Also, Denzel Good and Kenyon Drake have been cleared for training camp. They both sustained injuries last season, but they are now cleared and have fully recovered and are now cleared for training camp, which is great news. I will just say this right now. I am very excited for the season. I will give you more of my thoughts on where I think the Raiders will be, but I want to kind of get through training camp, hear a little bit more of what's been going on before I can really give you guys my full take, because I do want to hear about how certain guys are performing in training camp. And I just want to throw out there as well, there's been some minor transactions by the Raiders. The Raiders this week signed Matthias Farley, Isaiah Zuber, who's a wide receiver, and Isaiah Ike Brown, standout corner from the USFL. And if you don't know what the USFL is, the USFL is the United States Football League, that has been airing on FS1. New football league. They wrapped up their season, and there have been, I believe, a handful of guys from the USFL who have been signed onto NFL rosters. So congrats to those players, and congrats to the USFL for having guys get signed to the NFL. That's pretty big. But for right now, those are the updates for the Raiders as far as training camp. The other thing that I've personally have been hearing as well, from Hondo Carpenter, who is a writer for SportsIllustrated.com and who covers the Raiders on SportsIllustrated.com. I read a few of his articles, and in some of his articles, the one thing that I noticed that was a constant was the culture change that seems to be happening in training camp. A lot of players, as well as Hondo himself, have been speaking of the level of accountability that has been placed at the feet of the players. The coaching staff is holding players accountable. I also read that on two different occasions with Derek Carr and I believe it was Andre James, there were a couple of muffled snaps between them and then I believe Nick Mullins and another player. And when they muffled a snap, they had to run a lap. And the reason why I think that is interesting and noteworthy is because this coaching staff, I believe, is being very deliberate in their approach. I think that they're striving for excellence, which is something that, has been kind of the theme for the Raiders. They haven't been living up to it, but I think this is something that Josh McDaniels is kind of clamping onto and is seriously driving that point home, that he wants his players to be held accountable for their mistakes, but he's also trying to teach them so that they don't make these same mistakes during the season, which is something I love. I absolutely love to hear it, and I'm glad that they are pressing upon the players to be great and to do their best and to try to basically maximize their ability to run the offense and to execute, because that has been something that every now and then has been a struggle for the Raiders. Their execution has been poor at times, and I love the fact that Josh McDaniels is making that a point of emphasis in training camp, because I believe that's going to bode well for the season, the regular season, and onward. The preseason, the regular season, and onward, excuse me. So I'm very excited to hear that. I love the fact that there has been a shift in the culture, and I love the fact that Josh McDaniels is bringing a different level of leadership to the Las Vegas Raiders. And with all that they went through last season, it puts a smile on my face. Like it just feels good, because as a Raider fan, it's been tough. Last year with John Gruden and all the kind of things that came out, players having issues off the field, and then now, you bring in a Josh McDaniels who is now on his second opportunity as a head coach. From what is being said thus far, it sounds like he has really learned a lot from his time back in New England, and then even from his last head coaching opportunity. I believe he's learned a lot from that as well. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how things go for the Raiders going forward in training camp. but I will be keeping you guys up to date every week on the UNathletic podcast. So stay tuned as we continue to cover, or not even cover, just to talk about training camp for the Las Vegas Raiders. Want to thank you guys again for tuning in to this week's episode of the UNathletic podcast. Once again, please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit the notification button so you don't miss out on any content from the podcast. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CJ the UNathletic. Again, that's at CJ TheUNathletic. CJ the UNathletic. That's on Twitter and on Instagram. Check me out. And just real quick, you guys, I missed you last week, and I just could not get time to be able to just hunker down and record an episode, but I am back and better than ever. And I appreciate all of my supporters and all those who have continued to support me through this time, trying to create content and trying to just get myself out there. So I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you again for those who are tuning in. And please, once again, like, share, and subscribe. And then also hit that notification button if you don't want to miss out on every episode of the UNathletic podcast. Also, tune in on Twitter. I am hosting Spaces, and I am growing as a Spaces host. So check me out on Twitter at CJ the UNathletic. And once again, you guys, I appreciate you for supporting me. Peace.